handout here, I was reading a friend of mine that I saw a couple of weeks ago while I was developing my pneumonia, and I went to see this friend of mine that I hadn't seen face to face in 43 years, over in Wheaton when it was pouring rain, which was just lovely.
Great for pneumonia.
Yes. He told me about a couple of these blogs. One is called the New Liturgical Movement, and the New Liturgical Movement is where this thing comes from. And I was reading it today, and I said it's a tad bit heady, but given what we were just talking about, I think it was good. It came off of from yesterday, which in the Roman calendar is the feast of St. Joseph the Worker. Well, like it says in the very first paragraph here, it may seem paradoxical to assert that the feast of St. Joseph the Worker is not a glorification of work. No. It says, in moving down there a little bit, we see, even Aristotle saw, this supreme contemplation cannot be described as work or even as a human occupation at all. That which is highest in man, that towards which we are striving, is the Sabbath of resting in God. So this is all about resting in God, which is, the supreme point of our Christian living. And there's a long, well, it's not a long quote here, but it's a partial quote of Meister Eckhart, who was one of the a German medieval, I believe he was a Dominican, but, so this pre-Reformation, and he writes, he's a mystic, and he writes about these four places of coming to rest in God, and then you can read the rest of what the person who composed this had to say. And again, it is a heavily Roman Catholic thing, but it's, I think, the intention of it is non-denominational. In other words, it's not going to be limited by the fact of who wrote it. But the content of it, I thought, was worth having.
But the idea here is that when we actually are in communion with God, we're not going to be worried about being active and doing all that other stuff. We're going to be in communion with God, and that's the rest.
Right. Because there's the heresy, in quotes, of activism, that you always got to be doing. And today I was speaking with, several clergy, and one of the great dangers is that we define our faith only in terms of what we're doing for somebody else. And of course, our faith is expressed in works, but our faith is also expressed in our relationship to God. And so the church has more than one responsibility, but it's not the church if it never helps to develop the relationship of people with God. If all we were worried about was, we go through this liturgy stuff because we have to, but the real place is rolling up your sleeves and going out there and doing all this stuff, working in the food pantry, filling sandbags because things are going to happen, and doing all these things. Anybody can do any of those things, and they can do it for altruistic motives, and nobody can really criticize that. But when Christians do something, and that was the whole intention of that Tuesday night thing, why do we do what we do? That how is this thing that I do, or these things that I do, an expression of my faith? In other words, it forces me to look and see, how is this putting my faith into practice? Because that was one of those things that, I learned way back when we had to do a theological reflection on when I was, my first year in theology. We all had field education, some were working in churches, some were doing chaplaincy stuff. This was doing that one or that thing. And so we all would come together once a week with a theological reflector and talk about what we had done that week in our field education, to understand how this was not just a job that we were performing, but where it was coming from and why. And so that would be a way of understanding the call to ordained ministry. But, how do we understand our call to the ministry of all the baptized? The different things that we do.
So it's also kind of tying in what you're doing with your faith so that you can, recognize that piece. You could actually start becoming more aware of your faith in action.
Yeah, so that you're not just, that it's not that what you do is separated. This is church and then this is the rest of my life here. You don't do over here what you do over there, but the two are linked. And if they're not linked, then, something's missing. It's incomplete. All right? Now that we have all that solved, we are enlightened and moved beyond, let us turn to page 134. And the prayer, second prayer on the page, composed originally by St. Augustine. Keep watch, dear Lord, with those who work or watch or weep this night, and give your angels charge over those who sleep. Tend the sick, Lord Christ. Give rest to the weary. Bless the dying. Soothe the suffering. Pity the afflicted. Shield the joyous. And all for your love's sake. Amen. Okie dokie.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So is there one more of these, or in?
2 more sessions.
We end in June.
Huh?
We
Or
end
maybe
in
one
June.
more session.
One more
Because
session.
this is May already,
Yeah, this is May already.
so June,
So yeah,
one more.
in June.
And then when do we start up again, September?
What?
We may change the focus.
We have to invent something else.
Oh, are you done with these?
Well, it was
Well,
just
the next
designed-
time we
could
meet,
recreate
if we want to continue going on something, you to let me know.
The commitment that he made for all of these things was from whenever we started until June. And then it isn't to say that it has to stop, but we have to do a pause and reflect, and is this what we want to continue or change or what? At least that's what I remember when it happened.
To go in a different direction.
Well, the evening is better for me. I like an evening thing because